and there's such a habit to actively look for it or comprehend it with thinking. Although it's so many times it's said that it's so simple.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a recognition that before this thing already starts, it's already simply, when it's quiet, let's say, it's automatically, that these are objects and this is object, and it's all just
happening
of the one soup. Yeah. Is it so simple?
It's so simple that, and even the thoughts which are looking for something are it as well.
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't imply somebody that's having an experience. What's happened, which is maybe also a habit, but this is an energetic sense, is that those thoughts indicate somebody inside something that's having an experience, and that they're my thoughts. We don't even know where they're appearing. Actually, the distance between them and the external sounds is undefinable.
Yeah.
Like they kind of appear, and we've been told that we think in here, but they arise, and it's nothing to do with certain forms of thinking or certain patterns of thinking or ways of looking at life. They come and go. But when that person that believes it exists loosens, then the thoughts aren't grabbed onto so much. They're not such center focus, but they don't need to stop thinking. It's just that doesn't mean anything. But we put so much focus on what we think we know, and it's such a huge identity, our knowledge. It's worship the intellect.
Because there is some kind of sense that those thoughts need to be used to create some kind of structure in which I could fit in, somehow.
Yeah. But really the thoughts were only ever about practical. Like even the way we say like structure, it's a very practical thing, and then we thought that we could look at ourselves through our practical, you could say, discrimination or talking about what is. We thought then that we could say something about ourselves. So we humans start talking about our environment and how to improve our environment. And then they're like, who's experiencing the environment? And then they believe that they can speak about someone. And then they get lost in this whirlwind of trying to improve that someone. And sometimes I feel sorry for people that have got into spirituality or therapy, because then it puts so much emphasis on improving that someone that doesn't exist. It never existed. And then they're trying to be something better. I was watching this Dutch documentary with Paul. It was half in English, and Paul was translating bits and bobs. And it was saying, it was very scientific. I forgot what channel it was on in Holland. I don't know if you guys heard about it. And they basically started the show saying, science has proven there's nobody inside these bodies, so let's explore what that means for humankind. So they started off with the statement, there is nobody inside here, come on, let's get to, science knows this and has known this for ages. And then they looked at how that affects society. And they were interviewing loads of scientists, and the scientists were basically saying it's almost impossible it's highly unlikely for genetics, genes and conditioning to change. It's such a painful process that people go on trying to change that. Like trying to you've got generations passed on. Having a Khaleesi from Thailand, she's so different from European dogs and domesticated dogs, and it's totally a genetic thing. But if she belonged in the spiritual world, people would be like, you've got to release your anger, you've got to, whatever it is, you've got to look back to your childhood traumas. And that's generations of breeding of a more aggressive dog that then, and we can change it to a little bit of an extent. I could control it by pain and pleasure, by taking away to an extent. But the natural instinct is going to want to push to do that. So if you've got, like I remember when I was in the spiritual search, people used to tell me, I've not got the highest intellect in the universe, believe it or not, but they used to tell me that I had emotional blocks, and that's what was blocking my intellect. And if I got over my emotional blocks, my intellect, and I remember really believing this, like really like thinking, oh yeah, this is, and it's great in one way to get out of the thought pattern that you are a certain way and you're stuck like that. But in another way, you then get into this constant cycle of trying to improve this thing. And it's nothing to do with improving it in time. It's the disappearance into whatever's happening, into what's happening. But the great thing about all that spiritual search is that it debunks what you believe you originally take. Like you take, this is me and I am a certain way, and all the traditional ideas. But then none of the ideas are true, and you'll be running around in circles forever because there's never actually anybody there.
It's funny that when you just look to find the me or whatever, or how it works, or how thoughts come up, or how you function, or that you recognize you just do something and then the thought comes afterwards, and that you really don't understand anything at all. And it's clear. It is very clear. And then the people in the environment, of course, they have all the ideas, all the theories about how things work and stuff. And I know, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know you also don't know.
Yeah.
So
we have to pretend that you do know, otherwise war will start. And also the same with the thoughts is that whatever a thought arises now, in 5 minutes' time, they're more than likely going to change.
Yeah.
It's constantly changing.
But it kind of seems that at the same time, somehow on this kind of where the level where I need to, earn for living and all that, it seems that I need to externally kind of adjust to certain pattern, because if I don't, then I won't be able to.
You need to adjust what?
I need to somehow, on some kind of level, there needs, I don't know, fit into the society, because I need to, earn for the living, or I need to. So, and if I try, I don't want to make it like too hypothetical, but it seems that some kind of on some level there needs to be something where I need to play the game.
There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone, including everybody, has to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to play with humans, and most humans think this is real and this is actually happening. Mm-hmm. But in the scientific world, that would seem like an easier one to fit into. Maybe not in your line of work, actually. But in the sense of, it's a very practical thing. Mm-hmm. It's something that you're looking at and examining, and it's not really about you in relationship with it. Or maybe it is, I don't know your work.
I already started. But.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way the character works, but it's just not true and real.
Mm-hmm. Because that is sometimes like this example, when I cross on the US border and I show the passport and this is me, and then there's a story, and then it's kind of and then it's kind of playing, this is very, very real, and
every time I go into America, I have my story already. I've been to America a lot this last year, so I have this bullshit story that I'm part of this Christian group, and they love it.
Welcome.
Yeah, I say I'm part of Course in Miracles. What's that? It's a Christian group, and I say and they all light up. Oh yes, come in. So that's the way it goes. Doesn't mean it's really you. Anything you describe about the body, it doesn't mean it's the experience.
Mm-hmm. It's about fitting in society, etc. Already for 25 years. Mm-hmm. There's no me, and it all works fine. Mm-hmm. It is already happening.
Yeah. Actually, I think in a way it makes the human more normal, like the human side of things more normal. Because when the person's there, you're always trying to be something. Mm-hmm. So when you meet people, you want people to think a certain way of you, and you want, like, whereas when that's crumbling or gone, then it's just response happening, and
Yeah, because I feel sometimes I can't meet people because I always want something from someone, or I'm afraid that someone wants something from me. Yeah, it's like a very so then like any interaction with people is. I mean, for me, it seems like these are those two modes that either I can want something from someone, or someone wants something from me that I wouldn't like them to want.
Yeah.
And then every kind of this interaction is kind of.
And the thing is, isn't it crazy that it's the awareness of that, so the person that's aware of all that dynamic and that wanting, that creates the problem. It's like the person that knows that because obviously there's always going to be the movement of the body is always going to be towards pleasure. So you're never going to meet someone and just give them all your money or all your assets unless that's a pleasurable sensation. So the body naturally moves towards pleasure, but then it gets obsessed with that and believes it's happiness, and too much emphasis gets put on pleasure. So then it's always, and it gets so complicated. You've got to be something, you've got to look a certain way, you've got to have a house a certain way, you've got to have a certain whatever it is. You'll have certain clothes, you've got to have a certain garden. And then it becomes an obsession, and it's always the one that's aware of all that that's the problem. Otherwise the body will just naturally respond. This really doesn't, what's being talked about here really isn't about being aware of yourself. Like my dog is so unaware of herself, and she's totally free, and she's grumpy, and she's so cute as well, but like you could be a really uneducated person in the sense of psychology or anything you know about the human, and if that drops, then there will just be the gentle movement towards pleasure and the avoidance of pain, but it won't be, there'll be nobody there aware of themselves, and they might not even know about a lot of the more complicated dynamics that we talk about, and they don't even need to, because it's a disappearance into it rather than some form of awareness of it. It's this self-awareness that screwed it all up, or made it seem screwed.
Because the self-awareness is some kind of mechanism of controlling, yes?
Yeah, but also it's like, have you ever taken drugs or been really drunk?
So drugs, no. With drugs, it happens for me very easily. One beer is enough. I have recently almost passed out after half of a glass of wine, so I think, okay, alcohol is completely not for me.
But you know when you completely forget yourself, or when you're laughing, that's what that's the taste of it. It's completely forgetting yourself. Like when you're an artist, or when you're working, or driving fast or something, and there's nobody that's in control of it or doing it. There's just a dissolving into it.
Yeah, so for me the most fun is precisely when there are those moments where I start laughing out of no reason, and then it goes sometimes for half an hour, and then this is completely crazy.
Yeah, and you forget yourself. You completely forget yourself.
And very often that's still, like, in the head, it's still like a lot of fun, and it's really, really crazy. But that's not the problem.
The thoughts.
Yeah.
There might still be somebody there a bit, but not thoughts, not necessarily a problem. It's always the one that's aware of itself. Because if you're having negative thoughts and there's nobody that's aware of it, then what does it matter? Or negative sensations, if there's nobody that believes it's happening to them and that there could be something else, it's simply happening in freedom.
But then also kind of absurd. So there are sometimes those moments when it becomes like very, I don't know, the focus kind of relaxes, I would say, and then there is the sense of more spontaneity.
Yeah.
But then after somehow there is an experience that after that kind of finishes, because then there's often a lot of thought generation, and after that finishes, and somehow this I don't know how to phrase it, but then after the spontaneity finishes, it seems that all those thoughts that been there and before haven't been a problem because they haven't been somehow taken personally, they suddenly seem to become a burden, and there is a strong need to focus, because then it was like the focus was kind of freed. Yeah. But now there is the sense that actually all those thoughts are kind of becoming a burden, so there is a strong need to kind of focus on something specific, so that those thoughts are no longer
A burden.
a burden. So I can focus on, I don't know, doing something, calculating something, or
Yeah.
so there is somehow the sense that it's really, there is a strong kind of freedom in this relaxation. But then it seems that after some time, because when this focus is released, it means that anything can happen in terms of thoughts.
Yeah.
And so then all those crazy thoughts come, and then at some point there is a sense that they're becoming a burden. So I need to focus on something to be free of that.
Yeah. And it always comes to the one that's aware of them. They wouldn't be a problem if there was nobody aware of them. Like if my dog is in pain, or a dog's in pain, if it doesn't have a sense that it's in pain, then it's not suffering. There is simply pain arising in freedom. But even in that relaxing, when everything's beginning to relax, that's still an experience, because there's still somebody aware of that relaxing. So anything that you see is going to go. Anything that's experienced is going to go. Any experience, even in me describing it as a dissolving into it, it's kind of making it sound like an experience. So when you think that you've got somewhere, or when you think that you know what's being talked about, then that's an experience again that's going to go, and then you'll lose it.
Yeah, sometimes this is the funny bit that there's like always this, oh, I got something, but then of course I'm going to show no, that's not possible, right?
And then it goes, because then you've got something, and then you're looking at something in comparison to, and it's only ever what is. It's so hard to talk about, because even in describing, the dissolving into things becomes another thing.
Yeah. So this is still kind of the sense that there needs to be some kind of structure, and it needs to adhere to the structure. If somehow there is some kind of sensation that is not fitting the structure, then something has gone wrong. That's the instantaneous kind of response of the mind, and this is suffering, because of the instantaneous response, something has gone wrong. This shouldn't have happened.
So structure being like everyday life, or the person? What do you mean by it's got to fit into structure? Anything?
No, I mean just psychologically. Psychologically, it seems that, psychologically somehow, I don't know, there is this, for example, relaxation, and now there is a strong need to focus on something. And there's, this is bad, because there should be more tendency towards relaxation, so now the desire to focus onto something is a...
So the way that you do the science experiments and look at problems in science, you've taken that on to yourself as if there's somebody there. And there's nobody actually there that can focus and not focus. Who is that movement?
It just happens.
It's happening, and it's the end of that one that's claiming any of those happenings. It couldn't be any other way. And the thought processes won't bring you any more or less peace. They will always just be thought processes.
Because sometimes there is a belief that they will bring you more peace, but sometimes there is also the belief that they shouldn't be coming because they will take my peace away.
And that's an experience that comes and goes, and if you rely on that, then you'll always be in the pendulum of life, looking for one over the other.